Hi there. In this video, we will continue talking about the fraud examination process. But before I jump into this chapter, I need to explain the link between the chapter. We will discuss it in fraud in digital space or in the cyberspace, and the relation between the topic we will present now and the previous chapters. So you know how we are scaffolding on what we have built earlier. First, we say to understand the fraud examination, number one, when we do any kind of audit or examination, we have to look for the alarms or the red flags that might indicate, we are not sure, but it might indicate there is a fraudulent case going on. And if we get some red flags that might be good hints for us, this will not be our final conclusion, but we have to search for evidence. So what we usually do, we try to take evidence either in documents, in form of documents, or verbal, we make interviewing, or observation or inspection, where we can see how the operation was going during the fraudulent case, and we take a look on the different documents. Then we start to look at the people involved in this fraudulent act. So we start by the third party witnesses, where we start to interview them. And then we have a big discussion on how to develop a successful interview. And then we move to the cooperating witness who are in the scene during the fraud case. And then we move to the co-conspirator who might be in collusion with the fraudster. And then we end up with the suspect person. And in that way, if we conclude after our interview with the suspect person that he is the person, then we might go into interrogation where the suspect has to admit that he committed the fraudulent act. Then we start to talk about what are the different types of frauds that might happen. It could be simple fraud, stealing cash, for example, which is fine and we can find it out easily, or it can be complicated fraud. And this is what we discussed in the previous chapter. So we try to identify the simple accidental fraudster and differentiate him from the predator who comes into organized act with other individuals or organization to commit complicated case. And the complicated fraud could happen in different areas, starting from drug dealing or securities or mail fraud or web fraud, wire fraud, or securities fraud, or even the money laundering or bankruptcy fraud. And then we discuss the tax evasion and the securities fraud. So there are many different frauds that could happen in different areas. When we try to understand how the complicated fraud happen, we need to understand the legal side, the different acts that has been issued that can punish this fraud. And we try to apply the act into the case to see how we present the case to the court and get the right support from the judge. Then we say, how about the cyberspace? Is the cyberspace fraud or the cybercrime similar to the digital, the physical fraud? We say it is different because it's everything electronically. So the digital environment has been actually going through different types of fraudulent activities. First, start by political Paleolithic era, which actually started by stealing cash through the digital environment. And then Neolithic era, which is the accountant could steal more than cash by presenting incorrect information in the cyberspace. And the last one is the Geekolithic era, where we use computer and networks to steal not only cash, but data. And we can manipulate the data and we can destroy the data. And this is what we mean by cybercrime. So the cybercrime, it covers the role of the digital devices in the cybercrime. And we know whether it could be computer or network or iPads or cell phone. any devices can be used, or routers, for example. And we need to differentiate between computer fraud, where we use the computer to commit our fraud, or computer crime, where we use our tools to destroy the computer itself. Then we need to talk about the economic loss and the personal losses that comes as a consequence for what we see in the cybercrime. Then we talk about the international aspects of computer crime. What is the role of the digital devices here? First, we say, when we look at the computer crime, we have to see, is the computer the object? It means our goal from the fraudulent act is to destroy this computer or the network. Or we use the computer as a subject, for example, to get access to the bank accounts of different individuals. So here we try to break through the database of the bank to get access to the different statements of the individuals. So here the computer is a subject. Or we use the computer as a tool that can help in integrating the fraudulent act. Or we can use the computer as a symbol, because when we see something coming electronically to our email, for example, it has some kind of credibility. So here, for example, somebody can use the computer as a tool to generate mass emails, send it to many people through their connection of a certain individual. And here, when the people receive the emails from that individual, this will be a symbol for them that this email is official, and consequently, they might submit their details to the person who sent the mail. So here we use the computer as a tool and send mass email to different people as a symbol to collect information from them. As I said, there is a difference between computer crime and computer fraud. Computer fraud, we use the computer to make some fraudulent act, and this one has been punished by the Comprehensive Crime Control Act and the Fraud and Abuse Act. But computer crime, we use the different tools and techniques to destroy the data and destroy the hardware or the software. Consequently, whether we use the computer as a tool or we make computer crime, there is economic loss happens here. Responding to the illegal act, conducting a damage assessment, then restoring the data to the original condition, and then see what kind of delay that might happen in the operation, what kind of asset that has been stolen, and so on. So the economic loss comes from the destruction in the computer or the database, the delay in the time of the labor, and the bad reputation that might come out in the market based on what happened in this organization. This is going to affect their profit. So here, this is economic loss. A special loss, it's an actual or potential effect on medical care, for example, or physical injury to a person. So here, these kind of losses happen to certain individuals, certain cases, but not in every fraud we might see actual medical care or injury. But some losses could happen to different cases. Threat to public health or safety, damage to computer related to administration, and so on. So remember, the losses that can come out from the computer crime, it could be general to the economic situation, or it could be special. The international aspect here, and this is, if you remember, the 3 V's that I mentioned in the previous chapter about the fraud, the velocity, the speed of the information comes from one country to another to circulate the money. This is what we mean here by the international aspect of computer crime. The computer is used to mobilize the money from one area to the other. Securing electronic evidence is very difficult in this case. Complaints dropped, but losses have risen. And this is what we have seen it during the prior years, that we don't see people complaining about this crime because they don't know who is the originator or the suspect of this crime. The Council of Europe Cybercrime Convention was discussing this issue. Also, when we make a computer or cyber crime, we need to keep in mind the digital currency, the bitcoins, the blockchain, because sometimes it could be fraudulent transactions here. And because of that, we need to collect evidence. We need to make search and seizure for feature of any asset. And now let us talk about the fraud and other threats in the digital world. And this what will come now. This is what you see here. It's a summary for what I'm going to discuss in the coming slides. Insider threats, and this usually comes from employees who are working inside the company. They take advantage of their credentials to harm the database or take some information for their own benefits. Digital device hacking, which comes from people outside of the hackers, they might come in a decent way to collect some data from the users inside the companies through social engineering or hacker manipulation. Also, some programmer can send viruses which replicates itself across the database of the company and damage the files and sometimes the hardware. Or virus carriers or indicators. The last one, it's the hardware, the software, and the data security that might be at risk when this happens. And what are the softwares we should use it to protect against those kinds of attacks? The first one, as I said, the insider threats, and this is usually are committed by the employees. Why? Because they have access to the database and they know where is the holes or the weakness in the system. And they can even collude together to compromise the control over the system. Of course, there is less stringent supervisory control. Why? Because those are employees in the company, so we don't expect that those employees, they might be a threat to the company. Computer fraudster characteristics are similar to the traditional one. And here we don't differentiate between the individual who make actual fraud and the hacker. Both of them are intelligent, both of them are hardworking, both of them, they might have minimal absence. It means they are in their offices all day long to make sure they make good cover-up. They bored with the routine, and this is the reason they come up with something new for the sake of getting some income for them, and they might have egocentric. Digital device hacking, and here this comes from outside, where people, they might get access through communication with the database to get privilege, to communicate with the database and get access to the data. Incorporate unsuspecting digital device owners into the scheme, like good example, personal laptop by one of the individuals, gain access by generating a system acceptable username and password, and this will help the hacker to get access and communication through the database. One of them, social engineering, where we come in a simple way, decent way to get access from the person. Or we might show the person that we have some kind of authority, or we might intimidate the individuals for the sake of getting some kind of support from that individuals to give us information about the database. Also, what we call it trash diving, where the hacker or the fraudster might dive into the trash bin to get some information from the trash here and there. Here, I'm sure you might heard this from the internet or from previous classes, either in management or in accounting information system, which I usually teach, about the different kinds of attack that might come to the system, like Trojan horse, trapdoors, salami techniques, logic bomb, data diddling, scavenging, and the list is so long. Because of the video time, I'm not going to dive into each one of them, but I encourage you that if you take each term, go to the internet and you put it, whatever information you will get it is going to be relevant, because those are popular attacks that have been going in the cyberspace for a long time. And good example here, the logic bomb, it's the program that has been set up inside the database that might be triggered to destroy the database or the computer if certain action or certain time has happened on the database. A good example, a backdoor, whereas the hacker can, through the weakness in the internal control system, can get access to the system through coming up with communication with the database by fictitious username or password. We call it backdoors, and so on. Viruses, and it's very popular, and this is the reason we have to keep updating the antivirus software that we have. It's replicating itself across the files that might end up harming the files or harming the system itself. It can ruin the data and destroy the computer, or even slow down the network process. Types of viruses, macro virus, I love you virus, boot sector virus, parasitic virus, TS/RAM virus, application soft virus. And as I said, you can search for those ones on the internet. They explain it in more details, but I'm just telling you that the cyber crime can have crime using the computer or targeting the computer itself. Virus carriers, an indicator. Here it might be unknown application. We download it from a free website, and this can suddenly slow down the system. Or software or media brought by an employees without passing through screening by the IT help desk. This can also decrease the free space. Unsolicited emails, which comes from scammers, and this can also damage the database, and the file can be big. Vendor suppliers with infected software, through their communication with our database, they might instantly send their viruses through our database. The next point is the hardware. So I said the database can be infected, can be attacked by the hacker. There could be some viruses could happen on the system, or there is some kind of social engineering could happen to get access to the system. And once the fraudster get access, or the cyber criminal get access to the database, it can he can affect the security level of the database. He can play around with the password and can get access to the passwords of the different user, make logical control over the database, or he can go even and check the encryption and the digital signature. So to avoid the attack of the different hackers, the company can do like data encryption, data digital signature, to make sure that all the legitimate transactions came from legitimate users. And of course, some companies, they make biometric also to check this one, to check the identity or the authenticity of the person who's accessing the database, a smart card as well, and virus protection. And lots of companies, even here in SUNY Plattsburgh, we have dual authentication to get access to SUNY Plattsburgh portal. Also, antivirus software can be a good tool that can be used to protect the company's database from the attack, detect the computer virus very early. Traditional scanners, which comes usually automatically whenever we set up or boot up our system, then the antivirus will run to check for any viruses. Check recognizable pattern that might happen among the files or the emails, and limited usefulness of the database. Heuristic scanners look for unknown virus when inspect the executable file. Behavior blocking scanners, and this run continuously all the time to check if there is anything coming through the communication with different parties or emails. And a change detection scanners check for any change that might happen out of the routine work in the database. How can we investigate the virus infection? We can do that first by isolating the system, and then we run antivirus software. and then we see what we find. Then we interview the custodian and all the different parties who are in charge and using the system, make some kind of audit trail of the infection, how the infection has happened. Then we see from where the virus came, and then we see the policy that we should use to protect against the kind of viruses here. And finally, we see the cost and the damage. This is in brief what we need to discuss in this part of the chapter, that we need to know that the computer itself can be used as subject, or can be used as an object, or can be used as a tool or medium for cyber crimes. And it can be used by the people inside the company or outside the company, whether they make physical attack to destroy the database, or they send some virus or files to damage the database. I hope you find this short video useful, and I will continue talking about the cybercrime in the coming video. Thank you. Bye-bye.